Muslim Americans lobby to reintroduce Islamophobia bill. United Nations commemorates International Day to combat Islamophobia. GOP senators rebuke Tucker Carlson for downplaying January 6 Capitol attack. Majority of U.S. black women don't feel safe walking alone. Suicide bombing kills 9 paramilitary troops in Pakistan. Israeli forces kill 6 Palestinians in a Jenin raid. Series about Islamic history triggers Iraq's sectarian divide. From Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samia Sayed. Our top story tonight, about 75 Muslim Americans, including several imams, lobbied senators to reintroduce the Combating International Islamophobia Act. In December 2021, Democratic U.S. Senators Cory Booker and Ben Cardin, members of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, along with Bernie Sanders, introduced the bill. But it died without a vote in December 2022. The legislation would require the Department of State to establish a special envoy for tracking and combating Islamophobia globally. This position will help lawmakers and other government officials better understand anti-Muslim hatred and violence. It will also allow for the development of a comprehensive strategy to establish U.S. leadership in addressing Islamophobia globally. The legislation is the Senate companion to a House bill introduced by Representatives Ilhan Omar of Minnesota and Jen Schakowsky of Illinois. That was passed by U.S. House in December 2021. The lobby day was organized by Justice for All, a Chicago-based human rights organization. United Nations General Assembly President H.E. Sabah Qureshi and Bilal Bhutto, Pakistan's foreign minister, will co-chair International Day to combat Islamophobia. An observance is scheduled Friday at the General Assembly Hall of United Nations headquarters. Qureshi and Bhutto, chair of the OIC group, are co-convening the special event from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Participants will hear statements from several high-ranking officials. Those include the UN Secretary General, the Secretary General of the OIC, and the High Representative of the UN Alliance of Civilization. There will be group statements and statements from individual member states and observers. The United Nations has proclaimed March 15th as the International Day to combat Islamophobia. A Toronto area school board has become the first in Canada to introduce an anti-Islamophobia program. The Peel District School Board found about 1/4 of its 153,000 students in kindergarten through 12th grade and 244 schools are Muslim. The new strategy demonstrates the Peel District School Board's commitment to ensuring that Muslim-identifying students feel affirmed and have a safe and inclusive learning environment, the board said in an email to Anadolu Agency. The Peel Board's initiative received an A+ from the National Council of Canadian Muslims. It is the first school board in Canada to develop an anti-Islamophobia strategy, NCCM Education Programs Manager Asya Khan says. Khan said that Peel might be the first school district in North America to create such a program. Former board trustee Nokada Grub, a social worker and activist, put forth a notice of motion to create the anti-Islamophobia strategy at a school board meeting back in August. The idea was officially adopted by the board in September, and the final version of the strategy was adopted in January 2023. President Joe Biden on Tuesday unveiled a plan to extend Medicare solvency into the 2050s. This would be by raising taxes on high-income Americans and cutting prescription drug costs. Biden presented the proposal as an alternative to GOP attacks on the program used by tens of millions of seniors. If the MAGA Republicans get their way, seniors will pay higher out-of-pocket costs on prescription drugs and insulin, the deficit will be bigger, and Medicare will be weaker, the president wrote in an op-ed for the New York Times. He said the only winner under their plan will be Big Pharma. The plan also proposes empowering Medicare to negotiate prices for more drugs and bringing drugs into negotiation sooner after they launch. The Medicare plan is part of the president's sweeping fiscal year 2024 budget blueprint scheduled for release later this week. The president's plan comes amid a debt ceiling standoff Republicans are attempting to exploit to secure long-sought cuts to federal programs. House Republicans also floated changes to Medicare, including an increase in the program's eligibility age. Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and Senate Republicans lashed out at a Fox News host Tucker Carlson on Tuesday. This was for characterizing the deadly January 6, 2021 Capitol attack as mostly peaceful chaos. McConnell, a Kentucky Republican, said he wanted to align himself with the letter sent by U.S. Capitol Police Chief Thomas Manger. In it, Manger denounced Carlson for spreading offensive and misleading conclusions about the insurrection. He rejected what he called a disturbing accusation that Officer Brian Sicknick's death had nothing to do with the riot. Other Senate Republicans pushed back against Carlson's claim that January 6 was peaceful chaos. Carlson made the comments to his millions of viewers on Monday night. He aired selected clips of never-before-seen video of the Capitol on January 6 and downplayed the insurrection, in which 140 police officers were injured. A group of watchdogs on Tuesday urged the Office of Congressional Ethics to launch an investigation into House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. This is for handing over more than 40,000 hours of security video from the January 6 Capitol attack to far-right Fox News host Tucker Carlson. Carlson is already selectively using the footage to spin the insurrection as a largely peaceful event. Public citizens Craig Hallman and Lisa Gilbert, as well as former White House ethics officials Norm Eisen and Richard Painter, requested the investigation. They said the exclusive release of the January 6 video footage appears to have been the result of a political agreement between McCarthy, Tucker, Carlson, and others in McCarthy's bid to become Speaker. McCarthy has defended the arrangement with Carlson as similar to the common practice of giving select members of the media exclusives on certain things. The watchdogs contend it's more like providing a valuable government resource exclusively to one news outlet and discriminating against others, which flies in the face of First Amendment values. A story on how the majority of Black American women don't feel safe walking alone comes with details after the break, so stay tuned and we will be right back. Welcome back. Less than half of African American women in the United States reported feeling safe walking alone at night near their homes. That is compared with about 3 in 4 Black men and United States adults overall. Among all race and gender subgroups, Black women are the only group in which less than half say they feel safe walking alone. The data are part of a quarterly analysis from the Gallup Center on Black Voices. Meanwhile, 2 out of 3 Black women say they believe that they would be treated fairly and with respect if they had an interaction with police. That's slightly lower than Black men and much lower than the national average. 1 in 4 Black women report being treated unfairly in the past 30 days because of their race or ethnicity. That is higher than roughly 1 in 5 Black men. The United States on Monday announced sanctions against a Syrian military intelligence officer for his killings in the Syrian capital Damascus 10 years ago. Amjad Yusuf is accused of coldly and methodically murdering at least 41 unarmed civilians in the Tatamon neighborhood on April 16, 2013. The designation came days ahead of the 12th year of conflict in Syria. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the State Department is designating Amjad Yusuf a warrant officer in the Syrian Military Intelligence Directorate due to his involvement in gross violations of human rights, namely extrajudicial killings. Yusuf, his wife Anan Wasuf, and their immediate family members are ineligible for entry into the United States, he says. The top diplomat also urged nations against normalizing ties with the Bashar al-Assad regime absent enduring progress towards a political resolution. Blinken called on the Assad regime to cease all violations and abuses of human rights, including but not limited to extrajudicial killings, arbitrary detention, enforced disappearance, and torture. At least 9 paramilitary troops were killed and 7 others injured in a suicide bombing in Pakistan's southwestern Balochistan province Monday, an official said. It is the latest in a string of attacks on security forces. It targeted a vehicle of Balochistan Constabulary, said Farah Azim, a spokeswoman for Balochistan government. The suspected bomber rammed his motorbike into a truck carrying paramilitary groups. They were providing security at a traditional annual festival commonly known as Sibi Mela, which culminated Sunday, Azim said. The death toll is expected to rise as several of the injured are in critical condition, she says. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, who is in Qatar, condemned the bombing. He directed security agencies to use all possible means to bring the culprits to justice. No group has so far claimed responsibility for the attack. Thousands of Bangladeshi citizens held anti-government protests in the capital Dhaka on price hikes for gas, electricity, and daily commodities ahead of Ramadan. They gathered under the banner of the main opposition political group, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. BNP Central leader Abdus Salam said the Awami League government has looted the country's leading and most profitable private bank, Islamic Bank Bangladesh Limited, and irregularities and corruption have collapsed every vital sector of the state. He added the price of all necessary commodities has jumped rapidly beyond the purchasing capability of the masses. Salam said the only solution to the crisis is to oust this fascist government. Workers from different parts of the capital city joined the rally. They carried banners and festoons and chanted slogans demanding the withdrawal of all cases against former Prime Minister and opposition leader Begum Khaleda Zia. The former 3-term premier is being punished in 2 corruption cases and was disqualified in the previous national elections in 2018. She will be barred from the next national election constitutionally to be held in December this year or January next year. MBC Media Group announced a drama series about Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan, the first Umayyad Caliph, releasing during Ramadan. The Saudi media conglomerate has faced criticism in Iraq and other countries with large Shia communities over the decision. Shias believe Muawiyah was an enemy to Islam. Iraq's government media watchdog, the Communication and Media Commission, warned NBC Iraq, a part of NBC Group, that the show goes against regulations. NBC Iraq announced that it will not broadcast the series, but other NBC channels will broadcast it due to commitments with the producer. The series, directed by Tariq Alarian, cost nearly $100 million and took more than 2 years to produce. It features several well-known Arab actors, including Lujain Ismail playing Muawiyah, Iyad Nasser playing Imam Ali, Suhair bin Amara as Hind or Muawiyah's mother, and Wael Sharaf as Amr As. Shia cleric Muqtada al-Sadr has demanded NBC halt the series. Muawiyah was the first caliph of the Umayyad Caliphate, which ruled a large part of what today is the Middle East from 661 to 750 CE. He established the caliphate in Damascus after a war with Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, the first Shia imam who was the caliph in Kufa in southern Iraq. Imam Ali was assassinated in 661 and is buried in Najaf. Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang said Tuesday that Beijing will usher the world into a new era of stability and shared values. During a news conference, he blasted Western morals while remaining silent on China's human rights record. He said global governance should be promoted in accordance with the law and the principles of international law enshrined in the United Nations Charter. Gang added that equity and justice must be upheld while hegemonism and selfish interests must be rejected. He called for defending solidarity and abandoning division and confrontation. He also argued that Western nations hold too much sway in the international political arena and accused Washington of allowing domestic politics and hysterical neo-McCarthyism to guide bilateral relations. Gang did not address allegations of China's human rights violations against its own people in recent years, including genocide against Uyghurs. China is accused of committing crimes against humanity targeting Muslim minority groups, which it denies. Israeli forces killed at least 6 Palestinians on Tuesday in the latest raid in the occupied West Bank city of Jenin. The operation started around 3 p.m. when an undercover Israeli unit was discovered in the Jenin refugee camp, eyewitnesses told Middle East Eye. Large military reinforcements followed with dozens of armored vehicles, military helicopters, snipers, drones, and bulldozers. The Israeli military withdrew from the city after nearly 3 hours of heavy armed clashes with Palestinian resistance fighters. Israeli media said 2 soldiers were wounded in the clashes and have been taken to a hospital in Israel for treatment. Among those killed in the raid is Abdel Fattah Hussein Harusha, who Israel alleges is behind a shooting last month near Nablus in which 2 Israeli settlers were killed. At least 26 more were wounded, 3 of them in critical condition, the ministry added. That's all from our Toronto studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.